Good morning, my lovely social media family. I'm Justice, for anybody who doesn't know me. I wanted to pop on and go live with you about this topic I wrote up here in the description. Whitelighting, gaslighting, bypassing, shame, and how to navigate difficult conversations and pain and uncomfortable feelings with friends and family and healers and coaches, and how and when it is appropriate and even necessary to protect yourself, and hopefully how to do it skillfully. So I like to invite anybody who happens to join this conversation to participate in the comments, to drop those little emoticons, because that makes me feel good. But also, I do these as a means of building community. I try to talk about topics that I find relevant for myself and my community and my clients. So as a intentional community building exercise, I invite you to participate in this conversation, please. So as you come on, if you want to say hi, you want to say how you're feeling, where you're from, how this relates to, or ask a question, please do. And let's take a breath. And just relax, come into this moment. I want to go slowly so that this is how I work with people as well, so that what wants to emerge can do so in an organic fashion. So let's make some distinctions first of all, okay? We're all humans sharing this human experience. It's everything from like insanely pleasurable at times to like just like skin peelingly uncomfortable. That end of the spectrum to this end of the spectrum, everything in between is all valuable. It all has its place. None of it is unspiritual. It can feel undesirable because like we all crave comfort, which is just natural. We want to feel good in our bodies, and we want to feel good relating to each other. That's not the case. The case is that we're dealing with a full spectrum of experience and emotion, and everything from incredible kindness to incredible cruelty within the human spectrum. And as you drop your comments, I will read them so that we can engage. Nicolette says, this topic is great. I'm finally learning to put up boundaries and trust my instincts, intuition again. All right, babe, that is what, like, we'll absolutely 100% dive into that. Instinct injury and intuition and primal sensing and soul sensing is one of my favorite topics and core and fundamental to the work that I do with people. So yes, that is absolutely a part of this. So we just decided everything that could possibly come up is valid and matters. So all of your feelings are valid and they matter. White lighting is when people try to encourage you to raise above a current experience that you're having. And it often sounds a lot like just focus on gratitude. It's not that bad. Count all the things in your life that are blessings. What's another one? This is a This is just a soul lesson. They're well-meaning phrases, but they don't honor the current circumstances of the human experience. So I will define white lighting as trying to paint over the experience and raise the vibration of it before the actual processing has gone through, which actually allows us to sort of evolve and naturally, organically elevate our vibration. Gaslighting is when someone denies your experience. When you tell someone that that you're feeling sad, and they basically say you're no, you're not, or that or they deny the impact that they've had on you. You tell them, like, when you ignore me, or when you say dehumanizing things to me, I feel hurt. I feel devalued. And they say, well, that's your problem. You need to look inside of you about why you're feeling that way. This is one of those common kind of ways that abuse sort of gets passed around in the New Age community, is this idea that because we're all sort of reflections of each other, that we don't get to hold the outer experience accountable for its behavior. And that outer experience, relationship-wise, will often turn that back around and say, well, that's something that you need to look at in yourself. That's gaslighting. It's not entirely devoid of truth, because we do want to take responsibility for our own feelings and emotions. And we want to acknowledge that if somebody is making us feel like shit, that is about them and their behavior, and not about us being bad humans or doing something wrong. These tactics, white lighting and gaslighting, are both subtly shaming, and they are most definitely forms of bypassing. So these can be handed off, these can be used really kind of maliciously as a means of deflecting and avoiding accountability by somebody who is being abusive. And they can be used more well-intentionally by somebody who wants to see us not hurting, who doesn't want to be from, I love this is my new word, from an empathological state involved in our discomfort. So instead of feeling the empathy and the resonance between, like, my nervous system resonating with all the times I've felt hurt or uncomfortable by you sharing your hurt and discomfort right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to talk you out of it. And it's not entirely that they don't care for us, they're just not caring in a skillful way, because in that moment it's more important for them to maintain their comfort than it is to be present. So when it comes to being present, we need to have a lot of compassion for ourselves and those that we're interacting with, because it is not something that is really taught in our mainstream culture. So it may be extremely hurtful for somebody to sort of check out of a conversation, or to just want us to get over it, so to speak, because it makes them uncomfortable, because we're trained socially, we're conditioned culturally to move on to the next pleasant experience, to continue to focus on positivity, to continue to focus on the next goal. Brene Brown talks about how we love our beginnings in our culture. We love, like, that great start, like maybe that romantic story to the start of a relationship, and we love our victorious endings. But what we don't love to talk about, and what we really need to learn to talk about, is all the shit that happens in between, the whole mother-loving, messy fucking middle. And that's what we're living in, like, all the time. And that's where the discomfort arises. That's where anger arises. That's where frustration arises. That's where disappointment arises. That's where our past pains come from the past, because they're not really in the past. They're still like here with us in our body, and they seep into the current moment, and they creep into the way that we communicate in our current relationships, because we were conditioned by our past relationships to behave and to communicate and to respond and to expect in those ways. So let's take a breath and pause. Take a breath, pause, digest. If you have any questions that are coming up or any comments that you want to share, like, please drop them. I want to hear how this information impacts you, or anything that's coming up as a result of just sort of contemplating these concepts, because they're big ideas. My goal in sharing this kind of information and having these conversations in the mission state of my business, Illumination with Justice, is to communicate with clarity and compassion about the hard, holy, and human. So I consider myself a healer professionally. I consider myself a woman first and foremost, even above being a human, because being a woman is far more personal to me. Like, I'm in this woman suit, like, I have hormones, like, I bleed, I have these wounds specifically in relationship to men because I am a woman. I have these wounds in relationship to women because of the way that women interface with each other. And these are personal, transpersonal, cultural, collective, familial, and sometimes even in regards of like within a therapeutic container. It's all relevant. So I want to make some distinctions, because Anna Shell Grace had a post earlier, and she asked, what is the difference between a friend, a coach, and a therapist? And my response to that was education, skillfulness, and agreements. So let's break this down, because I put in here like how to hold your ground in any of these containers, and it's going to be a little bit different with each one. When we are dealing with family, we're dealing often with like the origin of our wounding. So nobody is coming to the table with a clean slate. Everybody has their past baggage, their unprocessed feelings and memories and emotions, their instinct injury, so to speak. And we all have our sort of ways that we've conditioned ourselves to interact within this system. Family is more often than not about kind of keeping the status quo, about not rocking the boat. And growing up for us, that was usually the best way to kind of survive and get our needs met within the system. Was like, we learned to like not ask for too much, because we learned to kind of interpret what's available. So we may have a need that we aren't fully able to express because we learned that need wasn't going to be met early in childhood. And as we sort of grow and develop within this relationship dynamic with our family members, that expectation doesn't often always change unless it's communicated about directly. And most people, just modern people who aren't doing inner work on themselves, who aren't sort of going to regular therapy, who aren't engaged in some kind of mindfulness practice, simply have not cultivated, or who aren't like listening to Brene Brown on a regular basis. Love Brene. People simply haven't cultivated the presence or the tolerance for their own discomfort to be able to hear us and to be able to listen well. So I'll give you an example. And, they're often more interested in protecting their position because when that discomfort comes up, particularly as a caregiver, it's like shame, guilt can come up with that. And like, we don't want to navigate that. It's uncomfortable. So an example from my own life, I wrote a piece last year that was titled How Growing Up in a New Age Cult Scarred Me for Life. And I specifically picked the title because it was provocative and because it's true. And one of the incidences that I talked about, the main incidents I talked about in this article, was how when I was 9 years old, this organization was just down the valley from where I currently live. They were a doomsday cult. They were sinking bomb shelters into the ground, and we were doing drills and preparing for Armageddon. It was like the tail end of the Cold War. And one night, they dragged us all out of our beds, stuck us in a bus, like pulled us up the mountain, and some of us wound up even being strapped in our bunk beds. This physically left an imprint. Like this, when I started like processing this last fall, like I felt like a physical imprint from that strap across my belly. And I read this article to my mom, and I love my mom. My mom and I have done a ton of fucking work individually and together to be able to have like a really equal kind of relationship. Like there's very little mother-daughter dynamics in that, except for like I came from her fucking body and like but like we're equals. And I think to a degree, like for me, that's a goal to have in all of my relationships. I want us to be equals. But when I read her this article, and I watched her do it, she was like, she took in the information, and she like I could feel her kind of shutting down. I think we were even just on the phone, and she was like, well, scarred for life, that's kind of tough terminology for a therapist to use, right? Like, don't you teach resilience? Yes, I do. But it doesn't mean that deep wounds don't leave scars. And some wounds will continue to ache in ways, like we may be able to tend to them, but they may just be constant. They may be things that we kind of monitor, that we're careful that we don't bump, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're a failure at healing. And the next thing that she said to me is something that is very commonly said to us, and it comes from a well-intentional place, but it is always about the other person trying to protect their own discomfort. She said, well, don't you think you just need to get over it? And it hurt so bad, and I stepped out of daughter mode. I stepped out of sharing mode. I put on my fucking like healer, like trauma informed hat, and I was like, Mom, okay, we're gonna stop right there. But like, you can't say that to people when they're sharing something vulnerable with you. It's completely it deflects the empathy that's available in this moment, and it's devaluing of my experience. And she was like, well, people have said that to me before. And I was like, I'm sorry, it's not right. That's not how we get over things. The way that we actually get over things is we find people that we can process with. If that's a healer or a therapist, that's wonderful. If that's our family, if they can be skillful enough for friends to do that with us, that's wonderful too. But we need to be witnessed, we need to process, and we need to move through the experience in our own way, in our right time. We need somebody to offer us a set of skills, not to be told that we need to get over it. So if anybody ever just tells you to get over something, you have the right to say, that's not helpful. You may not be able to like flip into fucking verbal mode like me, but this is what I do for a living, right? All you need to say in that moment, and somebody tells you like, well, you just need to get over that, be like, that's not helpful. If I could have gotten over it, if I could have just leapt over it like it was a fucking log in the forest, I would have done that. Like, clearly I'm climbing over this, and like my pants are stuck and my hair's caught in the brambles, and like what I really need right now is I need you to either just witness me and support me in like untangling myself, or like pick a fucking bramble out of my hair or something, right? Like, if I could have gotten over it, I would have. It's okay to call people when they're checking out. if we can do it skillfully, we both have the opportunity in that moment to evolve. And regrettably, this "you need to get over it" is a tactic that is employed by friends, family, and other healers and coaches and therapists in various ways. Telling someone that they can raise their vibration over their pain is another way of saying get over it. It's white lighting, which is what I talked about in the beginning of the video. Telling someone that their experience isn't really that bad, once again, is white lighting. So this is one of the ways that like you can recognize like this is happening, these different forms of being told to get over it. You get to call people on that and be like, that's not helpful. And that's a really simple way to lay down a boundary and protect yourself and to protect your emotion. Healers, I love you and I recognize that you are doing the best that you can. But when you come with this, just raise your vibration and focus on joy and create a gratitude list, I want to fucking slap you in the face. This is not okay. It's not okay. We don't heal by being told in any way, shape, or form to bypass our experience. What happens is it's like whack-a-mole. It might go down, but it's gonna fucking come back up again. And it's gonna come back up again often in a ways that's sort of sideways and that may have even kind of increased in intensity while it was under the surface. And regrettably, because we're in this three-dimensional experience, it doesn't just come out in sort of like emotional outlashing. It doesn't just come out in like, and kind of like internalizing and holding stuff like as depression or anxiety. It can manifest as physical distress in our body because our body is in conflict with itself. If you're telling someone that they shouldn't feel sad, that sad or anger is unspiritual because you're a healer and you believe in this high vibrational 5-dimensional reality as opposed to dealing with the 3-dimensional human one, you are increasing the dissonance between the actual spiritual source connection between human beings and ourselves and each other, and this beautiful natural spiritual world. That's not your job. Your job is to be present and to deal with your own discomfort so that you can fucking be present with people. And if you don't have that capacity, then the people who are coming to you with pain and discomfort should not be your clients, and you should refer them out. And for people who are going to healers, and I've worked with so many people who have worked with healers who have discounted their experience, who have told them to, who have told them to forgive perpetrators is another way to white light. To forgive just forgive the person who abused you. Just forgive your perpetrator. Like, don't worry about like the emotions that you've internalized. Don't worry about the toxic inner critic that you've internalized. Don't worry about the toxic abusive patterns and strategies that you've internalized. Don't focus on your need to protect yourself. Just forgive them and everything will be better. Fucking bullshit. This is forgiveness as a bypass, and it is not safe and it's not helpful. And in instances when people are telling you that you need to choose forgiveness over taking care of yourself and being honest about how you feel, you have every fucking right to protect yourself, and you have the right to, in the middle of a session, terminate it, because bypassing your pain will prolong the process of tending to it. Forgiveness occurs naturally when we feel like the restoration of our vitality and our power is equal to the person who hurt us. And that is a personal, internal process of taking accountability for our own energy and vitality, retrieving that energy and vitality from whatever that abusive situation was, and placing an accountability on the person who was responsible for it. And if forgiveness happens organically, then that's beautiful. But for some people, it never does, and that's okay too. Coaches, I mean healers, I don't mean to trash y'all, but like, take some time, get some trauma information, learn a little bit about empathy, learn a little bit about the human nervous system and how we actually process trauma and stress and deal with pain. And you will be far more effective and honestly a lot more fucking compassionate while doing your job. And people, when you encounter this with healers, you have the right to protect yourself. Your safety and healing is more important than their ego and reputation. Coaches. There is not a lot of there's no kind of accreditation process that's going on within the coaching system. And I think what tends to happen with coaches is the majority of them are kind of focused on goals. So this is not an appropriate process to bring your emotions into. Once again, emotions are organic, and they themselves, the experience of them, needs to be process oriented, not goal oriented. So if you're working with a coach and you're working with a coach to sort of help set and achieve goals in your life, that's a great place for that kind of process. If you're working as I'm working with a coach to alchemize my grief within the 6-month window, it's that's not really appropriate. It could happen, but most coaches that I have encountered, the methods that I've sort of noticed that are being passed off within these sort of coaching systems are more goal oriented. They're this is an appropriate way to work with a coach, right? They may not be trauma informed. They may not be biologically informed. Most coaches are not healers, and it's important to know the distinction. Some may, there may be a bleed over and a cross through, but if someone is looking at your emotional state as this sort of goal-oriented process, then that's really not an appropriate interaction. Our emotions and our feelings and the way that we sort of can mature naturally within ourselves, that's an organic process. It's we don't want to insert GMOs into that process. We don't want to try to try to grow something emotionally within us that's out of season. So when dealing with coaches, beware of what the orientation of the goal of the work is, and you get to choose. And if anytime in any situation you feel that your experience is being devalued by someone, or that you're being shamed, and shame is both direct and subtle, but that you're being shamed if you get that same sort of feeling you just experienced shock, fight or flight, your body has a reaction to shame that is very similar to being threatened. And if you experience that with a friend or a family member, it's okay to step away from the conversation. It's okay to retreat and let yourself sort of process and come back to your baseline. If you experience that in a therapeutic environment with either a coach, a healer, or a therapist, you have the right to also call them on it, to end the conversation in that moment, and to potentially terminate your relationship with that person, if that feels appropriate for you. So therapists are from a psychological standpoint, have the longest standing kind of most socially accepted accreditation as working with people's internal psyche and emotions. Just because you have the accreditation does not mean that you are empathetic or actually skillful at being present with people. So where therapists can have these wonderful letters at the end of their name, those letters do not necessarily signify that they are that they are embodied themselves, that they are working through their own stuff, that they have cultivated a state of empathy and presence and awareness, all it indicates is that they've gone through school. So when we're and they can all these same tactics skillfully, and they can more often, in some instances, they can look at the process of working with people as being very mechanical. So just because the letters are there doesn't mean someone's skillful at what they're doing. Just because the illusion of living a certain lifestyle is there doesn't mean that someone is skillful at what they're doing. Just because someone cares deeply about us and wants to soothe and ease our discomfort and pain doesn't mean that they're skillful at what we're doing. We are the ones who are responsible and need to be accountable to ourselves. We need to acknowledge, first and foremost, that the entire spectrum of our human emotions and experience holds value, and that anytime we are in any of those experiences, we have the right to protect ourselves. We have the right to protect our joy. Like, if we're in a joyful state and someone comes along and, we're sharing selfies and someone comes along and calls us a narcissist because we're like, we're too into ourselves in that moment, that's shaming. And we have the right to be like, you know what, fuck you, I'm protecting my joy. And if someone, we're sharing something vulnerable, we're talking either in a direct conversation. I shared something online last night about just being a deeply sensitive human, and someone told me that, like, well, if you just raise, the colors of your aura and your vibration. I was like, garbly gadabity gook, fuck you. Like, no. Like, I own, claim, respect, and protect my fucking sensitivity. It is why I am good at what I do, and it is part of it makes me who I am, and that's okay. My sadness, it comes and it goes. My joy, it comes and it goes. Anybody who knows me, like, you follow my page, and please do, and friend me if we're not already friends. Like, I have a ridiculous sense of humor. I have a sharp fucking wit. I have a huge magnanimous heart, and I am deeply fucking sensitive, and there's like wells of grief inside of me, not just from my own personal experience, but the fact that humanity is so fucked up. And like, I want to help us. I want to help us. I want to honor and claim all of those places inside of myself. And I hope sometimes by doing so that it's permission, it's encouragement for you to do the same. And when you're sad, like, you have the right to protect that. When you're angry, you have the right to protect that. You have the right to express that and share that, and that's valid. If it makes somebody else uncomfortable, that's about their discomfort, not about yours. We can hope to get more skillful at doing this so that, like, the more honest we are, like, moment to moment within our feeling state, how we feel in our bodies and what's moving through us, the less sort of, like, backed up and, like, clogged those expressions become. So the more effective we are at, like, noticing, how do I feel in this moment? What's moving through me physically, somatically, emotionally, the less likely we are to be to kind of unleash that on someone else later along the lines. I recently became aware of, like, a pattern of passive aggressiveness in myself that I was like, I didn't know that was fucking there, because I have a pretty good relationship with my anger. But some of these things that have been encoded in us, they take time to sort of surface, and they need space and care. We primarily need to take care of that, but because we're relational and interdependent beings, we also have the right to ask people to support us and to share with people how they can best do that. And when they're doing the opposite of supporting us, when they're whitelighting us, when they're gaslighting us, when they're encouraging us to bypass our experience, we have the right to call them on it and protect our experience and protect our tender hearts. And this is actually a better way to cultivate more healthy relationships as well. My phone's dying. And I feel like I'm kind of running down myself out of the things that I want to share with you on this topic for now. My website's illuminationwithjustice.com. I host a Facebook group called Meeting the Hard and Holy and Human with Compassion. This is a safe space to kind of share around more personal and tender topics if you don't want to do that on the whole Facebook platform. If you're curious about my work, I do I do a free, just exploratory interview with clients to see if we might be a match to listen to, and sort of just to let you know like what that would entail. I write for Elephant Journal prolifically. You can find me at elephantjournal.com. My profile, Justice Bartlett. I think that's about it for right now. Like, I just want to share so much love and compassion and like empathy for you from me, around our humanness and around our confusion and our desire to hopefully be better humans with each other and to cause less harm and to be more effective and compassionate, honest, and connecting. I think that's the name of the game. I'm pretty sure that's why we're fucking here. Like, I don't think it has as much to do with ascension as we think it does, about just really embracing our humanity and like fully like acknowledging that as a blessing, and that's something that we get to bless each other with every day. So lots of love to you, beautiful beings. Take care of yourselves and each other. I will talk to you soon.